Hi everybody, this is MaDonna from Mad Bees Quilt and Sew, and it's Monday, so guess what? Here I am. I'm on with you again, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about squaring up your quilt and how I do it, and oops, lights out.
Sorry.
How I do it, and I do probably do it, and I maybe you do it exactly the same way, but I'm going to tell you how I do it, okay? I have seen lots of people do it many different ways. I'll tell you what works for me, and you can make the decision on how you want to do it. After I have squared up a bit of it, I'm going to show you how to put together your binding strips so that way next week we can go ahead and bind. We are actually going to do our binding totally on the machine. So if you've not tried this before, next week would be a great week for you to join us again so you can watch that. So the first thing I'm going to do today is I had my quilt quilted, and the quilter did a nice job. Oh, that's me. I did a pattern that is just a fun triangular quilting pattern. So real simple and big. I just need to hold it in place. I really didn't want to do anything to take away from my front. And so I actually did it's called the light turquoise thread color. So I've just done a real simple pattern on there, add some movement to it. Anytime you send a quilt to the quilter or you're quilting it yourself, it does have a tendency to shrink up a little bit. And not always as perfectly square as you want it to shrink up. So I'm going to square up my quilt, and the way I do it is I actually use my inner border to measure to my outer border. So on this one here, I'm going to come to my cutting table, and I'm working on kind of a low table, mostly so you guys can see what I'm doing. Come on this side, yep. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my ruler, and I'm going to line it up on one of the lines of my inner border, okay? So I can see that my border here is hitting right at about 4 1/4. So that's the measurement that I'm going to use throughout as I'm trimming this up. And that is going to clean that up nicely. Now let me show you real quick here. I'm going to clean this up so you can see it. Okay, and when I get to right here, I'm just going to cut off so that way I can get rid of this chunk. Okay, look right here. See how I'm not absolutely perfect? I'm going to put my ruler on and just check this and see if I'm still at my 4 1/4. So there's my 1/4 inch mark of my 4 there, and I can see the seam right there is sitting right underneath it. I'm off just a hair right there. I'm going to pull that over, and now I've got that little piece. So there's my 4 1/4. My seam is there at 4 1/4, 4 1/4, 4 1/4. That'll clean up that little bit for me. So I keep checking as I'm going. Okay, so that's my 4 1/4. I feel nice and confident with that. I'm going to put my ruler on the opposite direction and look for my 4 1/4 again, and then I'll trim up that edge. If you wind up with a spot, that's a little bit less than your 4 1/4, cut to your batting. Don't try to move in. Use that 4 1/4 measure all the way around. If you find out that you've got quite a few spots, take it into 4 inches. Okay, so that way you've got a nice even amount all the way around your quilt. It's going to appear really nicely. Even though it may be a little bit smaller than you hoped for, we want it to look really in proportion to that inner border. So that's the easiest way to do it. I have seen many quilters, they'll use a large size square on this corner, so that way they know their corner is square. That's perfectly fine also, okay? Don't just lay it down and line up to what's on the outside. Line up to match with your inner border, and you're going to be so much happier with the way that looks. I'm going to do a few more cuts so you can see. I'm at that 4 1/4. The bummer is that I am working low when I'm doing this today, but we can also see that line right there that I used as my guide from before. I can put my ruler right on that line and make sure that I'm nice and square, and that way I can make sure my corner is really nice and square. Square it all up, 4 1/4, 4 1/4, and then I'm going to trim this portion. I'm only going to go as far as my cutting mat will let me go. I'm going to go to there, and then I'm going to pull down. See how I've got this little bit right here? That's within my 1/4 inch. So I'm still going to catch that with my binding. I'm okay with that. I want this to be 4 1/4. If it was all at 4 inches, then I could go in and trim this all down to 4. but make it so it matches to that inner border, and you're going to be so happy with the way it looks when it's hanging. Okay, so we're going to move over to the sewing machine for a minute, and I'm going to talk about binding. Come on over. So today I cut my binding strips, and I've got them all cut and ready to go. And I see lots of people struggle with this whole process. So I've got my strips, and I leave my selvage on. That's how I do it. Whoops, stay there. Sit, boo-boo. Okay, I leave my selvage on. It makes it very easy for me to be able to sew from corner to corner by doing that. I then take my next piece of binding, and I'm going to put it, this one's right side up, so this one's going to go right side down, right on top of it. And if I leave my selvage on, that gives me a really nice square angle there. So I'm just lining it up right to my selvages, and I need to sew across this. I need to sew across, going from here to here, because I pretend that this is 2 legs of a pair of pants. I was going to bring in pants today, and I totally forgot, okay? So if we pretend that this is 2 legs on a pair of pants, I want to sew across the waist. I don't want to sew through the crotch. If I sew going across this way, when this opens up, it goes right back on top of itself. That's not right. If I sew going across this way, when I open it up, see how it makes a continuous line? So we're going to sew right across from corner to corner right here. So you can pin this in place if you're more comfortable with that. You can draw a line across it. I just always use the lines that are on my sewing machine. So I know that if I'm underneath my needle, I'm going to put my needle into that little V there. So that little V right there, I'm going to put that right underneath my sewing machine so that I can see it, and my needle's sitting right in there, right there, perfect. And this little V here, remember that little piece of tape that we put on there? Right at the 0, it's going to line up right with that. It will sew perfectly straight for me and pretty. I just keep watching this. I don't even look at the needle. I watch this point. Right here, I keep watching, keeping it right on that little red line there, and right through, and that goes right across. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to pop it open, and I'm going to look at it. And look at how nice and neat that lines up into that. It's beautiful, okay? So once I've done that, then I can go back in and trim this down to 1/4 inch and press this open, and it's going to lay beautifully flat for you. Okay, I'm going to sew a couple more while you watch, okay? So I lay this down. Oops, I need this box today. I've still got my selvage on there. I'm going to grab another piece. This one's right side up. I'm going to put this one right side down, using my selvage as a nice straight line. I pick it up because I'm going to go across the waist there. Take it to my sewing machine. I put my V right at the top there, right up to my needle. I have my other point right here where these two connect, right down here, and I sew straight in. And just keep watching this point right down here where that red line is. If I keep watching this, it's really easy. Okay, now I'm going to get a little tricky for you. I don't even have to take this out from underneath the sewing machine. I take my hand, I do a nice walk with it all the way to the end. I bring it back up to my sewing machine and I set it down. Now it's right side up for me. I'm going to grab my selvage piece. I'm going to put it right on top. I'm going to just barely turn it and go back in and sew.
What? That was just downright impressive.
Make your life easier. Okay, make sure that that red is sitting right in that V there. Guess what? If I had another piece, I'd take my hand for a walk all the way out it. I put it back up on top, and I put my next piece right on top. I now have this all chain pieced together. Oh, hopefully there's scissors in here. There are. It's a good day. I pull this apart. We can see how nice that fits together. Fits together. Super easy. Trim them to 1/4 inch. press it open, and then we'll be ready for class next week. So, any questions out there today, Deanna?
Not that I've seen. I don't know.
Remember to give us thumbs up and likes. We'll be on again next week, Monday. I'll see you actually tomorrow, Tuesday, for Comment Sold. We have some great holiday things happening tomorrow. And next week, we're going to press this and attach it to your quilt. So square it up, get your binding ready, and I will see you next week on Monday. Thanks, everybody.